My name is Tricia Bennett-Mayer. I am a trained interpreter. I first started translating for the ICRC back in 1995, and I've been doing my current job for about 12 or 13 years. Working for the International Committee of the Red Cross is all about people, and working with people means communication. ICRC employees who work in expatriate or headquarters positions need to speak more than one language. And this means that candidates will have to take a language test when they apply to the ICRC. In order for a candidate to be successful in our language test, they need to be able to work independently in the language concerned, both in terms of understanding how the language is spoken, being able to speak and express themselves accurately, being able to read the language, for example, being able to read a high-level newspaper article, and being able to write a text in the language unassisted. We have a grid that sets out the various levels of language. The levels go all the way from excellent, which is the equivalent of one's mother tongue, all the way down to no knowledge. As far as a candidate's ability to function independently in the language, they are required to have the level good in all four sections: understanding, speaking, reading and writing. The first thing we do when we're organising the tests is to organise a 10-minute phone conversation in the language concerned. It's just a fairly straightforward conversation. If that goes rather well, then we'll organise a full test for the candidate at a later date. That means an oral test that lasts for about half an hour and a written test that lasts for about half an hour. The oral test also includes a reading exercise and a conversation that will be based on the content of the article we ask the candidate to read. And this really is the absolutely the most crucial part of the test. Again, can the candidate move outside subjects pertaining to their own personal experiences? Can they discuss concepts that they might have read about, they will be reading about in the reading text? The written test in some languages contains a 5-minute grammar test, which is just an indication for us as to how much academic training you've done in the language. But the most important part of the written test is a writing exercise. We give you an imaginary situation at the ICRC and we ask the candidate to write a 15-line report. No dictionaries, no cell phones, no Googling. You just have to be able to write it yourself by hand. The subject matter we ask the candidates to write about will depend largely on what kind of job they're applying for. So, for example, if they're applying for a job as a doctor, we'll come up with an imaginary situation where they're having to treat a certain disease. If, for example, the candidate is applying for a job as an interpreter, we'll come up with a situation where they are accompanying a delegate into a certain situation and we want them to write an account of the conversation. We do make a point, though, of stressing that we're not testing the candidate's technical expertise of ICRC procedures at this stage because they haven't been trained. We do invite them to use their imagination just to go ahead and write about how they would imagine it to be. We want to know what you can do in this language. What is your knowledge of practical vocabulary? For example, the ICRC does an awful lot of work in prisons. You might be going into a prison with a doctor. So, for example, at the very least, you need to know the names of body parts in the language. You need to know the names of the vital organs in the language. And you certainly need to know the names of certain diseases, such as tuberculosis or malaria, AIDS, influenza, measles, and so on and so forth. I would also recommend that candidates read as much as they can and focusing primarily on articles that are connected in some way to the work of the ICRC, and an article on any conflict anywhere should do the trick. Sometimes candidates fail our test, but if they've been through the recruitment process and we recognise them as being an excellent candidate with a very good background and they would be a very good match for the ICRC, we will encourage them to take the test a second time, usually within a 6-month period. And then if they get through the second time, then they have the job. To conclude, I would like to tell candidates, please don't get too stressed about the language tests at the ICRC. Don't build them up in your minds to be some huge, insurmountable obstacle. They are an important part of the recruitment process, but they are only one part of the recruitment process. So enjoy your languages, study your languages, hone your language skills if you feel you need to, and then come and do the test with us, and good luck.